Hello everyone, my name is Connor, and today I will be sharing with you my research on the Black Death. Ever since my trip to Europe, I've always been fascinated with the Black Death, after it was well known for killing over 75 million people in Europe during the 1300s. Throughout my quest to quench my thirst for knowledge, I have learned many things, and now I will pass that knowledge on to you. By the end of my presentation, not only will you be an expert on the physiology of the disease Yersinia pestis, but you shall also be very knowledgeable of the cultural effect this microscopic killer had on an entire continent. As you all know, biology is most certainly not an easy thing, especially at the cellular level. With all the Krebs cycles and the cellular respiration, it's a complicated thing. So I think it'd be best if we got the physiology of Yersinia pestis out of the way first. In other words, I'll explain how the Black Death killed you. Alright, before we delve into things, the fancy medical name for the Black Death is actually Yersinia pestis. So, Yersinia pestis and Black Death, same thing. Now, let's start with the basics. The Black Plague was a zootonic disease, which means it has to be passed from an animal to a human to infect them. Once a human is infected with the disease, then it can jump around from human to human. How the disease actually gets to humans is quite an interesting one. First of all, the disease has to start off with an infected host. In other words, a rodent or a rat or something like that. Then a flea comes and picks up the disease Yersinia pestis, where the disease kind of sets up camp inside the flea's digestive tract. Then the bacteria waits up in the flea's intestinal tract until the flea bites and tries to suck the blood of an uninfected host, in this case a human. Now, this is Yersinia pestis' time to shine. Now, this next part of how the bacteria actually gets into your body is kind of gross, but you are dedicated to figuring out how millions of people died. Once the flea has bitten an uninfected host and starts drinking its blood, the bacteria actually stops it from doing so, which then causes the flea to regurgitate the blood and part of the bacteria back into the host. Yeah, kinda gross. But the important part is the bacteria is now in a human body. Now is when things start to go downhill. Yersinia pestis is so effective at killing mostly because it effectively cuts off communication from one cell to the other immune cells. It targets essentially one family of molecules which is used to transmit signals involved with the immune response and cell death. So basically, Yersinia makes it impossible for your immune system to kill it with the help of many things. Yersinia uses outer proteins, also known as Yersinia outer proteins, YOPs, and it uses YOP-O, H, T, E, and M. These guys are like the evil version of the Power Rangers. They all work together to kill you. With the help of the evil Power Rangers, Yersinia pestis makes quick work of your body. It makes sure that your immune system can't talk to each other, and it also inhibits phagocytosis, which is like the only way macrophages and neutrophils and things like that can kill pathogens. Now imagine that your body's immune system is like Beatrix, the girl. And now imagine that Yersinia pestis is the guy, Mai-Pei. 如果我輸俾你嘅話，我今日鬼又拜你為師。睇到我功夫咧，黐我腳法啊！Now, we all know that I could probably spend about 4.5 weeks talking about how each protein targets a specific part of our immune system and how it dephosphorylates every SKAPHOM enzyme, or I could just really abbreviate it so everyone gets the gist of how this disease effectively makes your immune system look like child's play. Now that the disease Yersinia pestis is now inside a human body, there are three basic ways in which it proliferates itself or multiplies really quickly. This next part might get a little bit complicated, because depending on where Yersinia pestis decides to multiply itself, the name of the disease kind of changes around. But I'm sure you'll get it. The first type of infection is if a flea bites an uninfected human and the bacteria Yersinia pestis decides to infect the lymphatic system. This is called the bubonic plague, because once the Yersinia pestis has infected your lymphatic system, it starts reproducing like crazy inside the lymph nodes, causing them to swell up like crazy and have all the cells around them start to die because food can't get to it fast enough. This is also known as necrosis, and where the Black Plague gets the name black. The second way in which Yersinia pestis can infect a human is through the lungs. This is called the pneumonic plague. Starting to see a pattern here? The way that this happens is someone who got the bubonic plague, the bacteria spreads to the lungs, and the person who is dying of the bubonic plague starts coughing up the bacteria everywhere in the air, and an unfortunate victim breathes in that air. Unlike the bubonic plague that killed people in 4 days, the pneumonic plague was much quicker at killing people. Because Yersinia pestis infects the lung, it can immediately start the killing. The pneumonic plague could kill so quickly that there were actually cases of people who woke up at 10 a.m. in the morning, felt like $1,000,000, went to bed feeling 100% A-OK, and didn't wake up the next morning. That's how fast it killed. The last way Yersinia pestis creatively kills someone is by the septicemic plague. This way is the rarest, but probably the worst way to go, and not to mention the deadliest. Instead of Yersinia pestis multiplying in the lymph nodes and the lymphatic system, the septicemic plague is when Yersinia pestis multiplies in the bloodstream. Since there's so much bacteria in the bloodstream and nothing to kill it, the bacteria literally starts clogging up veins, effectively cutting off circulation to other parts of the body. Basically, people started to get necrosis and gangrene even though they were perfectly healthy. Also, people started bleeding into their skin, which made it look like they had insect bites all over their body. Also, it starts bleeding into people's internal organs, which is definitely not good. The mortality rate for each of the individual plagues untreated was astonishing. The mortality rate for an untreated bubonic plague was around 60%. I don't like those odds. And guess what? It doesn't get any better. The mortality rate for the pneumonic plague was around 90 to 95%. And last, but most certainly not least, the septicemic mortality rate was around 99.5%. Let's do some simple math here. Let's assume that 100 million people died from all forms of Black Plague. So let's assume only 5% got the septicemic plague, so that's around 5 million people that got it. So, out of those 5 million people with a mortality rate of 99.5%, under 25,000 people of those 5 million infected survived the septicemic plague. So now that you're all experts at how the Black Plague worked and killed people inside your body, I think we're ready to move on to the effect of the Black Plague on the entire world.